everyone, this is Japan Bunny Talk. Today, I'm in Yoshiwara, located in Tokyo's Taito Ward. When you hear Yoshiwara, you might think of its past as a yukaku, pleasure quarter, often called an adult theme park, or town for grown-ups. A yukaku was simply put a place where men paid women for sexual services. It was a district where women worked, offering various services for a fee. The yukaku flourished most during Japan's Edo period, 1603 to 1868. And even today, in the Reiwa era, you can still find traces of its history in Yoshiwara. In this segment, I'll explain what this adult town was like in Edo period Japan and what Yoshiwara is like today. I'd be happy if you subscribe to my channel. The origins of Yoshiwara's pleasure quarter. The Yoshiwara Yukaku officially began operating in 1618, which was quite early in the Edo period. In the very beginning of the Edo period, there wasn't a concentrated area like the later Yukaku, or a nightlife district with many adult entertainment establishments grouped together. Instead, these types of businesses were scattered throughout various parts of Edo, what Tokyo was called back then. However, about 10 years into the Edo period, a man named Shoji Jinemon, who ran a yujoya, a brothel, approached the Edo shogunate. He requested the creation of a dedicated district where yujo, prostitutes, could be gathered. There were several reasons behind this request to centralize these scattered nighttime establishments into one place. For example, the yujo women who interacted with customers for money sometimes attracted problematic individuals. While many customers were legitimate businessmen who spent their hard-earned money on yujo, there were also those who engaged in criminal activities like fraud or robbery to acquire money for their visits. The rise of crime and shogunate intervention. Yukaku, pleasure, quarter, establishments primarily operated as lodgings, where customers would stay overnight with the yujo, prostitutes. Consequently, dangerous individuals, like criminals, would sometimes stay for multiple nights, effectively using the yujoya as a hideout. This created problems for the establishments themselves. Businesses with dangerous people staying long-term would be avoided, and if seen as harboring criminals, their reputation would suffer, driving away regular customers. The Edo shogunate also wanted to apprehend these criminals. So, the yujoya owners proposed to the government, why don't you create proper rules and have the state, the Edo shogunate, manage these establishments? When yujoya were scattered throughout Edo, it was hard to control them. But if they were gathered in one place and a checkpoint was set up at the entrance to screen out dangerous individuals, it would prevent criminals from congregating there. Moreover, if the Edo shogunate strictly enforced rules like prohibiting long stays or immediately arresting anyone who caused trouble inside, it would benefit the establishments and make it easier for the shogunate to catch criminals, thereby improving public safety in Edo. It was seen as a win-win situation for both sides. Following these negotiations between the yujoya owners and the Edo shogunate, the shogunate agreed. Thus, from 1618, establishments with yujo were consolidated into one specific area, and this marked the beginning of the Yoshiwara Yukaku. I'd be happy if you subscribe to my channel. The name of Yoshiwara and its relocation. So, why is it called Yoshiwara? The area where Yoshiwara was built was originally a place with a dense growth of ashi, reeds. Ashi is a type of tall grass, similar to Suzuki, Japanese pampas grass. Since the area was created by clearing all these reeds, it was originally called Ashihara, meaning reed plain. However, the word ashi can also sound like akushi, meaning bad or evil, as in akushiki fushu, bad custom. So, it was decided that a name change would be better. They took Yoshi, which means good, and is the opposite of ashi, to create the name Yoshiwara. This is how the Yoshiwara Yukaku, a pleasure quarter for yujo prostitutes, was established entirely under the lead of the Edo shogunate. However, Yoshiwara was actually first located near what is now Ninjocho. This placed it very close to Edo Castle, right in the heart of Japan. During the Edo period, there was a system called Sankin Katai, alternate attendance, which required feudal lords, daimyo, from all over Japan to spend every other year in Edo. So daimyo from regions like Kyushu and Tohoku would walk for many days to reach Edo. While the most prominent daimyo often brought their families, their retainers usually came alone. Consequently, those arriving in Edo for Sankin Katai, without their wives and children, often visited the Yoshiwara Yukaku for entertainment. Yoshiwara's structure and relocation. So, the yukaku was operating smoothly in the Ninyocho area. But around 1650, Edo became incredibly prosperous, and the area around Edo Castle rapidly developed. The shogunate felt that having a pleasure quarter like Yoshiwara, a place where, frankly, men's desires were laid bare, so close to the Edo Castle wasn't ideal. So, the Edo shogunate decided to relocate Yoshiwara. It was moved to its current, somewhat more remote location in 1657. At the time of its relocation, Yoshiwara covered an area of approximately 20,000 tsubo, which is about 1.5 times the size of the Tokyo Dome. Today's Yoshiwara Entertainment District is much smaller, so you can see how much larger it used to be. Here's a diagram of Yoshiwara after its relocation. Although it's labeled as a Meiji-era map, the basic structure remained the same as in the Edo period, with only the businesses inside changing, so I'll use this to explain. Yoshiwara was a square-shaped area surrounded by moats. These moats, filled with water, were about 9 meters, 30 feet wide. So wide that you absolutely needed a bridge to cross them. There were also 3 crossing points on both the left and right sides of the moats, but these were always sealed off. Entry and exit were primarily restricted to the main entrance, known as Omonguchi, Great Gate Entrance. Everyone would enter from here and proceed along the main street. The path at the entrance is slightly curved. The former site of the Omonguchi still remains today, and we'll go see it later. I'd be happy if you subscribe to my channel. Remaining structures and surrounding shops of Yoshiwara. Here, you can see a part of the moat that once surrounded Yoshiwara. Even the stone wall here has remained untouched since the Edo period. In the past, this square-shaped area was entirely enclosed by such moats, forming Yoshiwara, the pleasure quarter. Since the moats were dug in what was originally an empty space, a lot of soil was excavated. This soil was then piled up, and the raised ground became Yoshiwara. That's why Yoshiwara is slightly elevated. You can see it here. This higher ground is due to that piled-up earth. Those remnants are still visible today. On the way to Yoshiwara, there were many horse meat restaurants like this one. The shop here is incredibly old, founded 110 years ago. It has a long history intertwined with the Yoshiwara Yukaku. Why were there horse meat restaurants around Yoshiwara? Well, people who wanted to visit Yoshiwara but didn't have enough money would sell the horses they rode in on to merchants to get cash. Horses were probably just the right item selling. One would provide enough money to enjoy Yoshiwara. That's why an unusual number of sold horses accumulated around the district. However, around that time, about 110 years ago, it was the period of Meiji Restoration's cultural enlightenment, when beef-eating culture was just beginning to spread in Japan. Therefore, horse meat wasn't traditionally eaten in Japan yet. But people thought, if beef is delicious, maybe horse meat can be eaten too? And that's how it started. At that time, gyunabe, beef hot pot, was popular for eating beef, as you can often see depicted in history textbooks. Similarly, umanab, horse meat hot pot, also known as sakura nab, cherry blossom hot pot, became a common dish. It's truly a case where this very shop likely wouldn't exist if Yoshiwara hadn't been there. And that original Sakura Nabe restaurant is still operating today. Omon Gate and the winding road, and here we are at the spot marked as Yoshiwara Omon, Great Gate. This was originally the entrance gate to Yoshiwara. The road remains exactly as it was back then, so men literally walked this very path to get to Yoshiwara. Now, there's no trace of its past, it's just an ordinary road. But look at the other side, the path has a distinct curve to it. As I mentioned earlier when showing the Meiji-era map, the road has this curve, which is exactly how it remains today. When a road winds like this, you can't see what's ahead, right? This design was intentional to prevent Yoshiwara, the town of men's desires, from being directly visible from the main road. Since the main road just one street over was used by everyone, people walking on it likely didn't want to see a town swirling with desires. Similarly, those going to or being in Yoshiwara probably didn't want to be seen. So, this winding road, in a way, reflects the modesty and human touch of the Edo people. I'd be happy if you subscribe to my channel. The temple for comforting Yujo and related books. The temple that offered solace to these Yujo was Jokanji Temple, located near Yoshiwara. At Jokanji, Yujo who had no family to claim them were mourned just like any other person. Inside Jokanji Temple, you'll find a memorial tower called Yoshiwara Soredo. Yoshiwara Grand Memorial Tower. It's the tower in the back. This tower is dedicated to commemorating the Yujo who worked in Yoshiwara. When you look closely, you'll see offerings like nail polish and hair ties, items specifically left to honor the Yujo. On this wooden votive tablet, it reads, Namu Amida Butsu, Yoshiwara Soreito, all Yujo. I believe this means it's commemorating all the Yujo who worked in Yoshiwara. And here, you can see the poignant phrase, born into a life of suffering, finding peace in Jokanji upon death. This phrase conveys that working as a Yujo in Yoshiwara was indeed a kukai, a realm of suffering, a truly painful experience. So, it essentially says, life may have been incredibly difficult, but rest assured, you will find peace in Jokanji after death. Yoshiwara today, this place is Katori Shobo, a bookstore with an extensive collection of books about Yoshiwara's history. I went inside, and it was quite impressive. It's a bookstore specializing in genres like the history of Yoshiwara, accounts of the Yujo, and even analyses of modern-day nightlife establishments in Japan. If you're interested in Yoshiwara's history, I highly recommend stopping by. They also sell goods like stickers and postcards, and I even bought this keychain. It's a keychain with a map of Yoshiwara from that period, and it says Yukaku on it. It's really cute. Changes from Meiji to modern times. Yoshiwara reached its peak during the Edo period, but as the Edo period ended and the Meiji era began, things gradually changed. The Meiji government aimed to progressively abolish old and undesirable rules from the Edo period. Consequently, the Yukaku also came under scrutiny. The government deemed it unacceptable for adults to sell their children, who then had to work in the Yukaku. Thus, the system of Nenki Hoko, indentured servitude, where Yujo were forced to work for a fixed period, was abolished. This happened in Meiji 5, 1872. As a result, Yujo working in Yoshiwara were no longer bound by these fixed terms and were told they were free to return home. However, many had lived as Yujo in Yoshiwara since childhood and knew no other world. Also, having been sold by their parents, many had no family to return to, so most continued working there. While Yoshiwara itself significantly shrank due to the Meiji government's influence, most Yujo continued their work by making private agreements with clients, essentially continuing prostitution individually. Then, in the Showa era, the prostitution prevention law was finally enacted in Japan in Showa 3-1-1956. It came into effect on the 1st of April, Showa 3-2-1957, making prostitution illegal in Japan. This meant that paying for sexual services from women by men was prohibited. With this, the government-sanctioned Yoshiwara Yukaku completely ceased to exist. Prior to this, prostitution wasn't strictly forbidden, so Yoshiwara had been operating as a government-recognized prostitution district. The enactment of the Prostitution Prevention Law in 1956 brought an end to the history of the Yukaku, which had begun in 1618. Its 338-year, over 300-year history as a government-sanctioned pleasure quarter concluded. I'd be happy if you subscribe to my channel. Yoshiwara's current state and Japan's tatame, public stance. So, what is Yoshiwara like now, in the Reiwa era? It's not that such establishments have completely disappeared. Adult nightlife businesses are still operating. Under Japanese law, prostitution, that is, paying for sexual acts, is a crime, so it's prohibited. However, the reality is that such establishments still exist. This reflects Japan's one and tateme, true feelings and public facade, or perhaps a darker side of Japan. These businesses actually register themselves as just bathhouses. They operate as private room bathhouses that offer services like women washing men's backs. The interpretation is that if a male customer and a female staff member happen to be alone in such a bathhouse, it's considered free love. They might just fall in love with each other. And if there happens to be a bed there, and this free love develops into further acts, meaning a physical relationship between a man and a woman, then that's also interpreted as a possibility. So, the tatame, public facade, is that the establishment is just a bathhouse. The women are just working at a bathhouse, and the men are just there to take a bath. And then, free love simply began there. However, a bath can cost 20,000 yen, or even up to 100,000 yen at more expensive places. Since the money paid to the bathhouse goes to the women working there, it effectively becomes a yukaku, where money is exchanged for sexual relations. Yet, these places continue to operate. So, in essence, while it's no longer government-sanctioned, the government tacitly approves of it, and a system similar to the old yukaku continues to exist to this day. You might wonder, what's going on here? Is this okay? Why are these facilities where prostitution effectively takes place still allowed to exist when it's prohibited in Japan? Why isn't the country trying to shut down these so-called adult towns filled with male desires? These are valid questions. The truth is, there's a rather murky relationship between the government, politicians, and businesses related to these adult entertainment districts. If there are other regions you'd like me to cover, please let me know in the comments. I'll make videos about the most requested topics. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. See you next time!